Ambassador Jonas Westerlund, welcome to Kallzopponime.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'd like to start off immediately with a tense situation in the north. Right now we have K4, which is in front of municipal buildings, and the action of Kosovo police is being held. There's police in K4 trying to make it possible for the mayors to go inside the building. The international community's reactions are that they blame Kosovo authorities and police for raising the tensions. Do you agree with your colleagues on this?
Well, I think we've been quite clear from European capitals and also from the American side that we believe that these incidents are most unfortunate. This is not the right time. There's a Greek word called kairos, which means that you have to find the opportune time for when you do something or when you say something. This is not the right time to focus on northern Kosovo. The right time is to focus on the implementation of the normalization agreement. So I can only echo what other European capitals have said, that is to condemn these incidents. That is to deplore the attacks against EU legs and K4 and to try and de-escalate the situation.
So when is it ever the right time to bring about law and order? Because as I hear you, it's been 23 years. For me, it's such a déjà vu as a journalist. I know similar situations many times throughout these 23 years since the end of the war. For you, it's the first time, because you're ambassador for the first time in Kosovo here, but there's never been the right time, and the situation in the north has always been like this.
Jeta, you know very well that I've been here before in 1999, and I crossed the bridge in Mitrovica in 1999. And as I said before, it's very disappointing to come back 23 years later and cross the bridge again with very little progress. So I agree with you. But the time is certainly not right now when we just have a very good step with the Brussels agreement and the Ohrid Annex. So now is not the right time to focus on issues in northern Kosovo. Look at the big picture, solve that first, and then we can solve the other issues. I think now what's happening now is that we need some sort of temporary political agreement for the north, given what's happening now. Now I'm speaking about in a very short-term approach. In the next couple of days, we need to have some sort of temporary solution. I'm not going to prescribe any solutions here and now, right? But I think there are a number of confidence-building measures that one can use and balance the interests of both parties.
Okay.
And have some sort of agreement on this.
Because you said what you're saying now to a group of journalists what I was a part of, and everybody there asked you, so how come that Brussels is not negotiating or trying to intermediate in the current crisis that has been created in the north due to the resignation of mayors? Then we had to have an election. Then the mayors were elected. Neither of this is part of the negotiations in Brussels when the crisis is hitting just in front of our eyes. You said to journalists, I remember, you need to ask the EU that question. But since we don't have the EU, and you are pointing out that I have some ideas, can you share with me ideas? What would you do as an intermediate crisis of the North agreement if this was you being the EU?
You have a very good memory. That's good. What I would do, let me start with the last question. But like I said, I don't want to prescribe this. There are ongoing talks now as we speak on this, but there are a number of issues that you can mention and you can use when it comes to building up confidence building measures. That is to not use police force. For example, that is to have a dialogue. How do you solve the issue with the mayors, for example? I mean, how do you do that? You can always have the legal approach that the mayors have the right to have the access to the municipal buildings, and that is correct. They do, but you also have to balance that with what's happening on the ground, and you have to look at the elections that you only had less than 1% of voters. So you have to build into an approach where you balance all these factors. You cannot just have only a legal approach. So I don't want to prescribe exactly what kind of measures, but I think there is room for some sort of temporary agreement here.
Who is working on this temporary agreement? Is anybody taking the lead from the international community to intermediate, or you're just expecting the Kosovo government to be the one to reach out?
My understanding is that there are a number of ambassadors speaking to the government now on how we can resolve the issue.
And how is the Kosovo government responding to these attempts for mediation?
Well, these consultations are ongoing at the moment, so I wouldn't really know. But I think there are consultations, and they are responding, and they are listening in to many of the views from various capitals. You know as well as I do, Jetta, that there has been a lot of phone calls from many capitals, and so I think the government is engaged on this in a dialogue, which is good.
But however, from where we're sitting, and majority of our viewers may think that the phone calls are largely in one direction. Kosovo government is, in the first hand, encouraged to hold elections and bring new mayors in order for municipalities not to be vacant. On the other hand, when the mayors try to go to work and there are crowds of people stopping them, Kosovo government tries to enter with police. The internationals say, oh, no, it's you who's at fault. So one day you tell Kosovo government, you're doing well done. The next day, oh, how dare you do what you're doing. This is how it looks like. So can you make up your mind? What should Kosovo government do?
I believe that we can all agree that the incidents on Friday and today are most unfortunate. And so we need to de-escalate the situation. I do not have a magic wand to find a solution to this. I admit, these are very complex questions and a very complex situation.
All I want to know is, do you know any phone calls to Serbian government, actually, who today issued a notice that it's allocated the army of Serbia to be at the border with Kosovo? Is any ambassador ringing Vučić?
Luckily, I'm only dealing with Kosovo here as a bilateral ambassador here, right? So I wouldn't know. But if you want me to guess, I'm sure there are plenty of phone calls, both to Pristina and to Belgrade at the moment.
I'll go on and talk about other things, which because there's no solution that we have. But before I go there, is there any lesson learned? I'm thinking of a tense situation we are now, but you have been witness to 8 very dramatic days in Afghanistan when stuck in the airport in August 2021, where you needed to save your own citizens. Any such lessons learned from Afghanistan, which in the end, unfortunately, it's actually the opposite of Kosovo. If the intervention in Kosovo is still an international success, that hasn't been one of the successes of international community. Nevertheless, do you have lessons learned from there, how to resolve a tense situation?
I have been working with over 10 mediation processes in the world, be it in Afghanistan, Iraq, Sudan, Somalia, and in the Balkans before. I think the lesson learned here, I'm not sure I know all the details what happened on Friday or what happened today, but I do believe that the key to success is dialogue. That is to speak to people. Even if you are not best of friends, you can still have talks. Even during the Cold War, talks between the Soviet Union and the US a long time ago now, but even during very tense situations, take the Cuba crisis a long time ago in the 1960s, they spoke to each other. So this is what I believe it's missing. I'm not sure what happened, like I said, during Friday's events or what has happened today or during the weekend, but I think that is missing. That is the dialogue. So even if you're not best of friends, you should try and talk to each other. So if you want
one thing you raised in the briefing you had for journalists, you said not at that time, not only there's no dialogue, the situation wasn't that tense, but you said that there's no women in the dialogue. You pointed this out. It leaves an impression on me you notice this and you make a point out of this. What do you think women would contribute to this dialogue?
There are lots of facts clearly showing that whenever you have women involved in mediation processes, they are much more sustainable. There are plenty of examples from Africa, the Middle East and Asia on this. It's just pure facts, by experience, by studying earlier mediation efforts. This is a fact. I think women represents 50% of the society. And that is the reason why they should be.
I'm just curious, have you risen, you've risen this issue with journalists, have you risen this issue with Kosovo government, asking them why you don't have women in your dialogue process as a part of Kosovo delegations?
I have risen it with the government. I have also risen it with the EU envoy, Mr. Lajczak, as well.
Very good.
What
do they say?
As you know, whenever we see these pictures, there are 4 men in one room, right?
Yeah.
So you have Vučić, you have Albin Kurti, you have Borrell, and you have Lajczak.
Yeah, all men.
All men.
And neither of them, when you raise it with them, neither wants to leave that power, do they? Or invite someone else, no?
Well, let's see what the future will bring on that subject.
Okay, if we want to talk a little bit about the EU, is it a coincidence that in the time when Sweden heads the presidency of the EU, Kosovo gets green light for visa liberalization?
Well, I would like to think it's not a coincidence, but I would be, as a humble Scandinavian, I'd like to underline that the Czech EU presidency really prepared the ground. As you know, the Czech EU presidency was last autumn, right? So when we took over 1st of January, just so your viewers will have that background fact as well, right? So, but we are extremely positive to Kosovo, and we were among the first to recognize Kosovo back in 2008. And I think we have contributed to that particular decision
So
as
shall
well.
we, because we've talked so much about it, shall we believe it that in January Kosovars will be able to travel visa-free? Shall we? Oh, do we dare? Do we dare?
Yes, I think we do dare.
We do
Not
dare.
think, we dare.
Okay, can I also ask you, Nen, what are your priorities, Sweden's priorities during the leadership it has on EU presidency, especially on the Balkans? Is there anything particular you want to achieve in this short presidency?
Well, we have the overall priorities, of course, but that's more focused on, economic development, the green agenda, and that is, of course, to support Ukraine against Russia's aggression. So it's really about Ukraine. That is really, and now the security order in Europe is being threatened by Russia.
Can I ask you whether you think Kosovo will manage to get a membership in the Council of Europe, and also what is your advice? What does Kosovo need to do in order to have a successful Council of Europe membership?
The Council of Europe in Strasbourg?
Yes.
Yes. Well, I'm not involved in those discussions. That is a different organization. Sweden voted in favor of Kosovo membership in the Council of Europe in Strasbourg. There was a vote, as you may know, in a few months ago. There are ongoing discussions in Strasbourg on this. So let's see what happens. I think the vote gave an impression of that there's a vast number of member states who are in favor of membership for Kosovo.
Now, I want to talk about the, first of all, I'm interested now until the visa-free regime, how many applications for visas, roughly, does Sweden get from Kosovo in terms of people who want to go largely for work?
Well, it is the Swedish embassy in Skopje that is dealing with that. So I don't have the exact figures for that, but there are a number of over 100 every week.
I'm interested to know about visas, because one of the key reasons, according to our research, why people are leaving Kosovo is because they feel their jobs are insecure here. There's irregularities on the number of hours, the number of days, the security of the workers. They feel exploited, while in the Western Europe they feel they get properly rewarded, and there's a law including health benefits, social benefits. This is according to our research. You are working on jobs and safety at work, among other things, as part of Swedish projects in Kosovo. What institutions are you working with, and how are you going to improve this so not everybody wants to go to Sweden and have Swedish standards of work and stay here, get Swedish standards in Kosovo?
Right. No, I think it is worrying that many people are leaving Kosovo, and I do believe that once we have the visa liberalization, we may have less people leaving because people can travel back and forth. So the interest of leaving will be less. We are supporting through our reform cooperation a number of institutions. So it's really focused very much on institutional building. So for example, we are supporting KEPA, the Kosovo Environmental Protection Agency, for example. We are supporting the Kosovo Statistical Agency. So it's a lot of institutional building, right? But we're also supporting Innovation Center Kosovo, ICK, to support small private businesses. As you may know, that they laid a foundation for Giraffa, a very successful business here in Kosovo. That's just one example. That's how we create employment opportunities.
And precisely, I want to know, embassy is the first door when a Swedish business wants to come to a country. What are the key questions you get from businesses that want to invest here, if they want to invest at all? And what are maybe challenges of why, in the end, they decide to go elsewhere in the region, not Kosovo?
Jetta, you may know that just last week, we inaugurated the Nordic Chamber of Commerce. I said to myself,
well done, congratulations. We should have had that long time ago.
Yes, indeed, that's my point, because I noticed that we have a Nordic Business Association in Belgrade, we have one in Tirana, we have one in Zagreb, and we have a Swedish Chamber of Commerce in Sarajevo. So why not in Pristina? That's what I myself.
So now it's a Nordic one,
now
where it's a common between Sweden, Norway.
Yes. So it's Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and Finland, right?
Okay.
And that will, I hope, become a hub for Swedish companies and Nordic companies.
So how will it help?
Well, we will have a dialogue with Swedish companies, and of course Nordic companies as well, but Swedish companies, and to attract companies to come here. So that will be the hub for that. We had, for example, one region in Sweden is called Skåne, and we have what is called Invest in Skåne, a state agency, or rather a regional agency for this. He was there during the inauguration last week. He said they had over 50 Swedish companies which are interested to visit Kosovo very, very soon. 50 companies only for that part in Sweden. So that's a very good sign. But let me tell you, many of the contacts we're having are from the Kosovo diaspora. There are over 70,000 Kosovars in Sweden.
So Swedish Kosovans, right?
Yes. Some of them are born in Sweden, but some of them are the first generation. And those people are the ones calling me all the time and wanted to invest. Last week I also had a meeting with a Swedish couple who came to me, and we had a meeting in my room, in my embassy. And it's a Swedish couple, but they have roots in Kosovo, and they wanted to spend a few years in Kosovo. Mm-hmm. They were thankful for being raised and brought up in Sweden, but they have their own children now. They want the children to learn Albanian fluently. So they came to me and asked, how can we start a business here? How can we spend 2, 3, 4 years with our children here so they become true Kosovars?
So it's remarkable that Kosovans call the Swede to help them invest in Kosovo because they should know better than you, don't you think?
No, you're right. I mean, one way of doing this would be to contact the Kosovo embassy in Stockholm, for example.
But what I want to get in is that we're interested to know what do these people need in order for us then to hold our institutions accountable. Can you list some of the problems they have once they want to invest?
I think the first one is really information. Mm-hmm. It's difficult to get information. So where do you have the opportunities? Where are the business opportunities? That's one thing. Mm-hmm. The other one is the bureaucracy. It takes quite a long time to register your company here. It takes a long time to do business in Kosovo still. I think we've done some improvements. We, as the Kosovo government, has done some improvements the past 1-2 years, but it's still too complicated to do business here. Mm. So those are the main 2 hurdles in my mind.
Mm. Speaking about the diaspora, on the other hand, what we see often, diaspora investing, because of these lack of opportunities, most of them we see buying homes, buying flats in Kosovo.
That's true.
Therefore, we have our country, our cities have turned into a building site, complete building site. So many people sometimes think that money is being laundered in these building sites. I'm interested to know whether you have information that Kosovo is a place where money earned illegally in Sweden is being laundered. Is that how you see Kosovo as well?
Well, on your first point, yes, it seems to be correct that we have many from the diaspora who are buying flats here. And that does not really support the economic development. It would be much better if they could support investments. So I think I'm really supportive of some of the ideas from the current government to start some sort of fund, a sovereign fund, mm-hmm. Who could contribute with that. But I'm lucky in the sense that the diaspora in Sweden have not asked me at least about that. Maybe they don't need to ask me about how to buy an apartment, of course, but I have many people asking the right questions. That is, how can we invest mm-hmm. in Kosovo? On the corruption, I have no information. I know that we are financing anti-corruption activities in the country, but I don't have any information on that.
Okay, one thing that these building sites do is add a lot of weight on our environment. Basically, we are getting way too many buildings which affect the quality of the air. We have no infrastructure to support those buildings necessarily. You are helping on, as you said, Environment Agency. Sweden is known for doing an economy without necessarily hurting the environment or on the price, to pay the price, environmental price on economic development. What are these reforms that you see Kosovo must do to become more or less a cleaner place? Because you probably are too much of a diplomat to say it, but you must have noticed how dirty Kosovo is.
Well, it's difficult not to notice the air in Pristina during the wintertime. That's very difficult. You can smell the burning of coal, right? And that is perhaps the biggest hurdle. But let me be undiplomatic for a few seconds. Mm-hmm. That might be a small issue, but mm-hmm. you see people throwing garbage in the streets. You see older people doing that together with the grandchildren and simply just throwing paper in the street, and then they're sadly teaching the grandchildren to do the same thing. When you go out to a lake here in Kosovo, what do you see? You see a lot of garbage on the beach. I mean, people here, they love to go to the lakes, the few lakes that you do have here in Kosovo, but they don't really understand. So why do you leave the bottles and the garbage left if you know you're coming back? So that is a bit annoying, to be undiplomatic.
So should we tighten the law in this respect? Should we get more punishments? We don't send the police over at the lakes to watch who's throwing the garbage.
No, you shouldn't. You shouldn't.
How must we deal with this then?
Well, I sort of confronted a few local friends about this, and they would normally respond to say that, well, the municipality should also arrange to have, you know, a garbage bin there. And have it emptied every week, right? So it's this two-way street that you need to meet halfway. I mean, maybe the mayors need to do more on this, but there's also a need for a culture change on this, right?
When you spoke about the air, I immediately wanted to ask you: have you read our energy strategy for next 10 years, which implies that there will be 200 to 400 million euros investment of our taxpayers' money in coal for the next decade. The renewables will come in, but according to that strategy, the renewables should be invested in by the private sector and donors like yourself, because you like clean energy, while my own taxpayers' money will be invested in coal. What do you think about this?
In Sweden, we would have done it differently.
Would you, in Sweden, exploit a wealth that you have underground, if it is coal, even if it's dirty? Would you have done it?
Look, you just reminded me that after the war in 1999, I do believe that it was Sweden who managed to get the coal reactor B started again after the war. So we did help you to start with the energy on coal after 1999. We would not have done that today. So we have changed. We're having a debate in Sweden when it comes to hydropower, for example. That's been a debate for a very long time, 40, 50 years. Also a very complex debate. I mean, do we put hydro plants in every single river? Because it has consequences for the environment to do that. So we have struck a fine balance there to do that, to have hydro plants in some of the rivers. So that's the balance. But you know that most countries in Western Europe are phasing out coal, and we hope that Kosovo will do the same.
Last but not least, Sweden is, I find it quite impressive how much you invest, promote, and support cultural heritage in my country, because I find that there's no benefit to your country, the fact that you restore some cultural sites of my country. Tell me, why do you do that? Because many other countries in the world, they give money to fight corruption, to improve women's rights, but not cultural heritage. They leave this to local institutions. And how do you think this helps Kosovo's tourism?
Well, immensely, I believe, because, look, I just visited Mother Teresa's mother's house where she was born in western Kosovo, a kulla there, and they are restoring it, not just for the sake of restoration, but also for the sake of tourism as well, and I do believe in that. Look, we also financed partially the restoration of the mosque in Jakova and then the old bazaar in Jakova, and that will, no one can dispute that will have tourists to come and visit Jakova for that very reasons. I would like to say that most of the development aid that Sweden stands for in the world does not necessarily benefit Sweden. But we do believe that by helping other countries, we will have a much more, a better world and better security around the world. So eventually it will help Sweden, right? On a global level, better security in the world and better environment will help Sweden in the end.
And last, how would social justice that exists in Sweden, what can we learn from it? Where do you want to see more justice in Kosovo from the experience you've had here, apart from the fields you talked about, more dialogue, more women? Where would you like to see more justice?
Well, I have to come back to the word dialogue again, because that is really the key word in Sweden. When you have a dispute, it could be a dispute between two neighbors, an easy dispute about a tree hanging over a neighbor. It's sort of classical dispute in any cartoon. The first thing you do is to organize a mechanism where you talk to each other. It is not a legal matter. Maybe in other countries you will have to sue someone about that, or about more complicated issue, but in Sweden we always start with a dialogue. Can I mention another thing? Since we spoke about environment, what I would like to do is to create a cartoon, a superhero for Kosovo, who can be the symbol of environment, but a symbol of cleaning up Kosovo as well. I mean, more the everyday garbage which I spoke about. So we will have a competition during the Annebar Cartoon Festival among artists, and have that competition, and the Swedish embassy will pay for the publication later on for the cartoon, for the comic strip. But I hope that could symbolize a much better environment.
But is environment one of the criteria to make a environmental hero through the cartoons?
Yes.
That's the criteria.
Yes.
I think it's a great idea. It should be video.
Yes.
I think it's a great idea. And finally, I know you invest in free media a lot also. So I want your comment on the recent attacks to the journalists that have happened in the north. There's been journalists' cars being ravaged, attacked, broken. What do you think this does to the media, considering you have 2 decades long of history and investment in free media in Kosovo?
No, but what can I say? It's terrible. I mean, we can see an increase in many countries, and in particular many conflicts around the world regarding attacks on journalists. And that is really the first step to a less democratic state. So I wholeheartedly condemn that. I think you have such a great media landscape in Kosovo. If you compare to many other countries in the world, you're really, given that you're still a young nation and that you had a conflict in this country, I think you're a great example of this.
In the end, can I ask you to publicly speak about women being involved in the dialogue a bit more? I've heard you speak about it in briefings, and now you say to meetings to the government. We would appreciate it if you do it.
I promise you, Jetta, I will do that. I promise you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mester. Thanks for being in the program.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.